often, I say to my teams, ask our clients why. Why this, why that? So you get to that deeper level of understanding of where they are, what they need, what is keeping them up at night, what are those itches that we can potentially scratch for them in a good way.
This week on the ADOTAT Show, Kevin Krim, CEO of EDO, takes us on a heartbreaking journey through life, creativity, and CTV. From unimaginable loss to building something truly meaningful, this emotional conversation reveals the human side of Adtech.
Multi-billion-dollar complex federal court litigation. We do it day in, day out. And we've built a team dedicated to doing nothing but keeping you safe in the most dangerous litigation in the world. We're comfortable where everybody else is horribly uncomfortable.
And with the litigation piece, we bring the compliance piece, right? That's what I'm adding. That's what my entire team is adding. We've built TCPA World only for you folks to help.
And now the host of the ADOTAT Show, the Dean of Data, the Rabbi of Roez, the Prince of Performance, the Sultan of Strategy, the one, the only. Give us a huge applause to Pesach Lattin.
I'm back with Kevin Krim, the only man in Adtech who can talk CTV outcomes without putting an audience into a data-induced coma. This time we go deeper, weirder, and far more personal. 7 series, 7 flavors of reverent truth. Each one is a rabbit hole with Wi-Fi. First of all, how are you doing? Not the great busy LinkedIn robot version. What is keeping you sane these days?
What's keeping me sane these days? Well, the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals is a good thing. We're excited about that. And then
you got seats?
I do not. No, prices are heady to say the least. Post EDO exit, maybe I'd pay up for that, but until then, I'm happy sitting in the living room with my kids.
Yeah, I remember my first time on the Knicks. Like I was down there, and I realized, first of all, how big the players are compared to me, and I'm 6'3", and how small the court is. And they just go when you're right there on the.
Oh, yeah.
It was right behind the sportscasters, and they just. Like one step there on the other side of the court.
MSG is a great place to watch a game.
Yeah, and I went up to the skybox or whatever it was and ate. It was great. Great experience.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Upfronts were busy, as you covered. We've got a lot going on generally. We're prepping now for Cannes Lion and that migration to the south of France, the annual trek out there and back. And so this is a fun time of year.
So you've been in the trenches where media, tech, and creativity collide. You've dealt with this Sisyphean task of aligning data nerds, creative, and ad buyers. Your book, Raising Creative Teams, might as well have been subtitled, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Red Line. So here's my question. I looked over it a little bit. When you say creative leadership, what does that mean?
Well, wait, so Pesach, I didn't, maybe we can just pause for a second. I didn't write a book about creative leadership, sorry.
It says you wrote a book called Raising Creative Teams. That's actually, you didn't? You probably should now.
I should. I have. That's so funny. Raising creative teams. That's a good. Yeah, no, I didn't write that, but that's a good title of a book.
Well, in the future, Kevin's going to write a book called Raising Creative Teams. No, we're not cutting this out. This is funny. You are not Kevin Frank?
I'm not Kevin Frank.
Oh, okay. Actually, I knew that. So let's go back to the question. When you mean creative leadership, what do you mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, I do talk a lot about creativity. We'll talk more about some of that in my nonprofit life as well. But with my team, we talk a lot about creativity. And for us, a big part of that's being curious about why. Often, I say to my teams, ask our clients why. Why this, why that? So you get to that deeper level of understanding of where they are, what they need, what is keeping them up at night, what are those itches that we can potentially scratch for them in a good way, not in a bad way. And then I often say to the team, once we've defined the problem through our curiosity, once we've really gotten to the bottom of a core problem, then we unconventional kicks in, right? And resourceful kicks in. And these are keywords around here where we talk about, we need to find a solution. And if we can't find the right one, let's make a new one. Right? Like let's invent something that solves it that's never been done before. And it's often about turning sort of things around and looking at them from all sides that you finally get to that sort of question of, or that answer to the question of, how can we really solve this for our clients or for each other? when we're finding ourselves hitting some kind of wall. And so for me, it's often just encouraging the questioning, encouraging that willingness to turn something on its head and take the chance to look at it differently. And then lastly, it's that determination that we're going to find a way, or we're going to make one. And that is a recurring theme here at EDO. And I've done that, I think, pretty successfully across the other teams I've led over time as well. And it's pretty key, I think, to having a healthy creative.
If last touch attribution worked, your waiter would take full credit for your meal. We make sure the chef gets credit too. Incremental.
Team.
Can you describe a time when your entire team was on fire, and I mean metaphorically, unless you have a story, and you had to decide whether to play fire chief or arsonist?
Yeah, interesting. I really am a big fan of when people are feeling like, there's sort of a lot of, sort of nervous energy or even worse, panic. You got to calm it all down. There are times though when, and so I'd be the fire chief, but there are times where I find, you can catch, it's human nature, but you catch any organization, even the best ones, they can get complacent, not in general per se, but about a specific issue or a certain topic. And that's where I do want to sometimes play that instigator and to light a fire. And, I think my teams would all say there's probably like once or twice a year where they'll hear me raise my voice, and the rest of the time I'm very even keeled. But there's if I smell complacency, if I smell us getting lazy about a certain issue or a certain topic, then I can light a fire. For sure.
So what's one thing that the younger creatives constantly get wrong about working at ag tech? Something like they think Slack is a personality.
I think, this idea that data is the enemy of creative is, to me, a really insidious, wrong idea. I see how it gets formed, right? Because at the extreme, data just sort of rinses away everything else. And I think creatives are the best people to push back on that sort of tyranny of data being used the wrong way. Because creatives are so good at asking tough questions, asking those, inversion type questions where they turn things on their head. And say, what if it isn't like it always has been in the past? What if is a good thing to do. But really, data should be supporting creatives. That's always been something we say at EDO from the very first days. One of the formative conversations we had in the earliest days when we were really just getting going was, we are not going to tell creatives the answer. We're going to give them data that supports their judgment. So we're not going to tell them what to do. We're going to give them tools to help them be more effective at what they want to do. And so that's why, some of the most creative teams on the brand marketing side that are out there, whether it's Disney Studios and the work they do, or some of the best automakers or some of the best insurance companies, they look at our data around how their creatives are doing. And it's of all the people inside these huge orgs, the creatives, the one who are cutting these ads and really responsible for the final product, these ads, they are the ones who are most eager to get the latest data from us. And I love that. But it does come down to that mindset of data can be your friend, but you have to realize that it's your judgment of how to use it that is at the core of it. So you need to be empowered. You need to view yourself as in the driver's seat. And so that's what I would coach creatives in this industry, is to be in the driver's seat with data. Don't abdicate your ownership over it.
So let's play a hypothetical here. You're stuck in a brainstorm where everyone says to you, or your client says to you, you want to go viral. What do you do? And you can't fake a Zoom freeze.
You want to go. I think going viral as its own goal is a mistake. Not to sound too zen, but the more you want it, the less you're going to get it. I do think authentic, great creative ideas have the best shot of working. And one of the dimensions these days of working is how much, it gets shared in all these social environments. But if that is your only goal, I think people sniff it out as inauthentic, and it is going to hurt it, not help it. So it's all about just a great idea. And we see that in our engagement data. I was at a picnic recently, and a bunch of folks who work in film and TV were there on the creative side. And they're like, what are the best ads? Why are they working like this? And I said, it's usually because they're just the best ideas. And they're like, they're like, you're the data guy. You're supposed to give us all these, all these special tricks.
That's what the data says.
Yeah, no, I said, the cheat sheet doesn't exist. I mean, then this is why you're going to have a job in the future still, right? Is because it's judgment, it's taste, it's that creative magic of all these elements coming together in just the right way. Little things like the timing of a joke in a 30-second spot, the timing of when that joke lands. I've seen people in very different industries, again, let's say movies and autos, I've seen they play with different cuts, and the movement of a joke within a few seconds in a whole 30-second spot can mean all the difference in the engagement rates being, double. There's no AI that's going to tell you, oh yeah, you always have to have the joke in the, at the 28th second. No, it's never as formulaic as that. There's a magic to these that is about, I think the human judgment and taste. So I'm a big proponent of creatives are going to have jobs for a long, long time, even though I'm one of these arms dealers of data.
So I've noticed in the industry there's often a fine line between innovation and nonsense, and it's often written in Helvetica. So what's your system for separating the brilliant idea from a beautifully designed turd?
I would say, and this is why I have a job and why data will still be a part of this for a long time. You got to test it. I mean, you just got to get out there and see what the data says, because those brilliantly designed turds, unless you've got your olfactory sensors up, you may not detect them, right? I mean, they're.
Yeah, I think Double Verify might be creating that soon.
There you go. So I'm a big fan of get it out there, see what the data says. If you think you're going to get the perfect creative idea right up front, I'd say you're fooling yourself. Get your best 3 ideas out there and see what happens.
So where do you think creative leadership goes? Is it all about EQ, AI, or just surviving another reorg without losing your soul?
Sadly, I do think a lot of pressure is on people for that last option. I think there's a lot of survival instincts that kick in. But I would say it's a really good balance of art and science, right? I think the comfort with having intuition and a gut and using it, while also being comfortable using the data to pick apart what you're learning from every repetition, every chance to kind of get more feedback is good. I think that those people who are as balanced as possible between art and science are going to be the ones who are most successful and should be least worried about surviving that next turmoil.
Speaking of more turmoil, everyone's chasing outcomes like it's the last helicopter out of metric Saigon. But you've been on this hill for quite a while, waving the predictive data flag before it was even cool. Why is the industry still addicted to impressions like they're a sugary breakfast cereal for CMOs?
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, in the TV sense of it, it has felt like a lonely hill for a long time. But when you zoom out, I mean, it's the hill that Meta, Google, Amazon have conquered for a long time. I mean, Google longer than any of them, but Meta's been making, quite a business out of it. And Amazon more recently it's the right way to think about the underlying value of what you're buying. But I think TV has long been categorized inappropriately as a top of funnel medium. And it's because of the old sort of, pre-digital paradigm where you couldn't measure it. So you may have known it was happening. And a lot of direct marketers knew it was happening, but you couldn't see it. So you settle for what you can measure, which is, how many eyeballs are in front of the screen. And you do that through a panel. Now you're going to do it through big data and a panel. But the reality is that all along people have, when they see something on TV, they've been doing something about it. And it was just really, really hard to see that until we came along and we wrangled huge digital data sets, made sense of all that noisy data and found the signals in it to tell you what was working. But prior to that, it was still happening. You just weren't seeing it.
Can you give an example when an outcome totally contradicted the flash engagement metric? Something like when it got 3 million views and sold 12 units.
Yeah. I think it's a lot of the time, I gotta tell you, I know this seems like the less exciting answer, but it's true. A lot of times our data reflects what you would expect. It is often confirming our intuition about the biggest, most engaging programs generate the biggest, most engagement with ads. A really exciting ninth inning, that goes into extra innings, that ad break between innings is going to be the highest engagement rates of any ad break in the program.
You think sports is going to be one of the higher engagement rates? Live TV, live sports?
I mean, it has been for the 10 years we've been doing this, and I think it will continue to be hands down. It is absolutely the top of the value pyramid in TV for a good reason. It attracts large audiences, but they are engaged with both the programming and the ads. And what I was getting at is that those moments of high engagement in the program, they translate straight to the ad breaks too. So like good quality programming, sports is often the best, but a great scripted drama will also generate high engagement with the ads. It's less consumed less often now as live. It's often consumed on demand, but it is still going to generate the best engagement rates for advertisers because it's great programming. So I think that's a truth that is not, like the data supports the sort of axiomatic truth of it all. I did hear some people at times speculate, if it's so good, why would people look down from the screen and engage with their second screens to search or go to a website or otherwise engage with that brand that's advertising. But we're just like Pavlov's dogs when it comes to our training to take action when we see something that's interesting to us. So that is what's happening, and we're often confirming it. I think the trick is to truly quantify it so that you can differentiate by fine degrees and figure out what you should be willing to pay for, the playoffs versus the regular season versus, the preseason. I mean, those are things where you should not be accepting, some flat rate. You should really be negotiating over the differential value of all the choices you've got across this huge TV landscape. Just like, in all these other digital platforms, you would have very different bids on very different, opportunities. Your sort of willingness to pay should be changing very dramatically based on what you think the outcome is.
So why do you think marketers still cling to GRPs like a Linus blanket soaked in denial? And I hope people get that reference. It's maybe a little outdated.
Yeah, I get it. One of my youngest child is named Linus, so clearly you're talking to the right guy. I think GRPs have hung on so long for two reasons. Inertia is a powerful thing, right? But I think the bigger reason is that media mix models have that as a primary input. And media mix models are really powerful in this industry. And I think they're one of the big barriers to better, faster innovation. So I think about those a lot. I want them to get better. I don't think they should go away. I think they're helping do something really important, but they have not evolved like the media landscape has evolved.
So what's your most controversial take on what attention really means and it doesn't mean?
Attention is a solution looking for a problem in CTV. And what I mean by that is CTV starts with high attention and the variance is not a lot. There's not a lot of signal in attention to help you understand the quality of the audience engaging with the programming. Whereas in open web digital, especially digital display advertising, you had huge problems with attention. I mean, I was a publisher of news websites before we started EDO. And, we had ads running below the fold that were, being charged to advertisers and no one saw them. And that was not good. And we weren't proud of that, but it was just something that we didn't have the tech to solve until Double Verify and IAS and Moat came along. And then we did start, using good viewability measures as a way of properly accounting for what where the attention was. So there was a solution to a very big problem. I think in CTV, most people are watching with eyes on screen because they have no choice. They want to get to the programming and it's full screen, big screen, and if I look away a little bit, is that really like a huge difference in value? I think not. Our data reflects not. When you see these attention measures, they hover in pretty high ranges. And when you try to correlate that to anything else down funnel, it just doesn't correlate.
Right. Well, I think that's the Telly model. Telly is like, if you're just in the room, we're going to show you ads, because if you're in the room with the TV on,
That's right. And I think Telly's got the right idea. I'm rooting for them, by the way. I think we'd love to have.
If they get more than 3,000 TVs out, I will be rooting for them too.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
The problem they're having is no one's getting them.
Well, I think that was a chicken and egg issue, from what I understand. Of they were supply constrained too, so it was a bit of a thing. But it sounds like they've solved that, and I'm rooting for them because
it's a great idea.
Many of us want really good data about what's happening in that last few feet into the living room, right? I mean, that is a hugely valuable set of data for all of us in the industry.
And maybe it'll help me keep my kids from being too close to the TV. I don't know if your kids have that problem. They stand like
there are times where I'm like, why are you that close to the TV? By the way, I can't see through your head, so yeah, move.
So if you could replace every dashboard in America with a single metric, what would it be and why? And you can't say engagement. It's like the soy milk of KPIs.
Okay. Well, I mean, I would want a predictive KPI. I would want one that is telling me, while I still can do something about it, what's going to happen to my business. I'd want a canary in the coal mine, so to speak, right? And, that, I think is something that you get pretty readily from Google and Meta and Amazon, as I've mentioned. And I think you want that for the rest of what you're spending. And so, we can call it, whatever it is, but I want that precog, minority report to tell me what's about to happen in my business. And, I think what EDO is doing is
Is Tom Cruise going to play you on TV? Is he going to play you in your life story?
I am taller than him, but he wouldn't.
Well, everyone's taller than him, but
he wouldn't be a bad choice. He wouldn't be a bad choice. I'm more of a Clooney guy than a Cruise guy, but whatever it takes.
So let's zoom out for a little bit from outcomes and talk a little bit about Convergent TV, the war of interest, metrics, and mayhem. The 2025 Upfronts seem to be a little bit of like a gladiator match. Amazon flexed its AI tools, NBC Universal pulled the nostalgia level. I can get that word out. Lever with MJ and Wicked, and Fox weaponized Tubi like it's a Gen Z missile. Everyone's selling engagement, but the pipes underneath are still kind of messy. Who's actually innovating in CTV right now, and who's just adding QR codes to their PowerPoints? And you can name names, please, with lots of sarcasm.
My take on this year's Upfront was that this was like the great flattening in that like Tom Friedman, the world is flat sense, where you really used to have two very different pitches coming from the traditional media companies who were all about their programming and their talent. And then you had the sort of disruptors who were all about their tech. And now you have, I think, a much more level playing field. There's going to be strengths for sure, but you've got, the traditional media companies, they were overcompensating for years, talking up their tech and data. And you had, the newer entrants overcompensating, talking about their original programming and their talent. And this year it felt as balanced as I've seen it, where everybody came in with pretty good original programming. Everybody's got live sports, which, we should sidebar.
Except Philo, which I have to bring up, that they are kind of like the, everyone's uncle in the basement right now because they don't have live sports.
Yeah, and at the right price, that'll be fine for them because their content costs are going to be a lot lower than everybody else too.
Right.
But to me, the sports leagues are in such a power position. They've got to be careful not to overplay their hands like MLB may have with ESPN. But you've got at the NFL, who have always been the most savvy purveyors of their rights, right? They have been so careful to be the only national sports brand from the earliest days, right? I mean, when MLB and even the NBA were very localized in their rights deals, the NFL was very consciously creating these national franchises around, Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, and then eventually Thursday Night Football. And they've just done such a smart job of staying as national as possible to be the biggest, of the leagues. And now they're playing a game of spreading it around so that no single partner has too many rights of the NFL. Everybody's getting a sprinkling of it, right? And that is, I think, just a masterclass in, keeping a healthy ecosystem out there, healthy competition for your rights. That's going to be, I think, something that everyone else is going to want to replicate. And so you're going to have everybody have a certain amount of rights, except maybe Philo, but even they might find, the right price for the right sports. And that's a big leveler. And then you've got tech. And, I think between the stuff you can build yourselves, there's such good partners out there that are willing to work with you. Everybody's got pretty good tech and data as well. And so, yes, you're going to see Amazon coming really strong with their shopper data, with, AI-driven creative options for, really interactive ad units. But you've got other people doing the same thing too, and one reason that EDO loves working with Amazon is because for every endemic category of advertisers that Amazon can serve with all of their own data about outcomes. There's a ton of money in non-endemic categories of advertisers where people like EDO can help Amazon prove that they're delivering value. So, I think you're going to see people continue to have strengths, but this is the healthiest, most competitive ecosystem out there, I think, right now. CTV is more competitive, more healthy. You're going to have more efficiency for buyers and sellers than any other of the major markets out there for advertising. I think the other ones are going to be less competitive and less of a fair value to each side of the ecosystem.
So why do you think CTV is struggling with the same problems we had in digital video in 2010?
Well, tell me more. Tell me about what you think the same problems are, because I want to pick them apart, but I want to make sure I'm thinking of
pre-rolls, the ghost of pre-rolls, the ads showing up 5 times at once.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean,
I get every subscription for obvious reasons. I want to see the ads.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just get the same ads over and over again. And I only need so many tampons for my life.
Frequency is one of the biggest problems and one of the biggest opportunities for the sellers and buyers to get right. Our data shows time and time again that sort of combination of ad load, which we define as minutes of ads per hour of programming. That ad load, the lower you get the ad load, the higher the engagement rate with the ads, the higher the outcomes from the ads. And then on the other hand, frequency is generally a decaying curve. There is a little bit of a lift though, where you can gain frequency and still grow your outcomes, and then it starts to decay at different rates for different situations. So finding the optimal balance of ad load if you're the sort of sell side, and the right amount of frequency as the buyers is the perfect place for everyone's happy. Optimal return on ad spend for the ad marketer, optimal revenue yield for the publishers. The problem though is really comes down to all the imperfections of identity of who's watching the ad. Right. And then there's also all the dog's breakfast of sources of advertising where you don't have the right IDs on the ads. So not a single true ID of who's seeing the ad, who the ad's being served to, and no true ID of the unique creative being served to the person. And so because of all that poor identification, even if you want to get the perfect frequency, it's an absolute mess to try to match that, it's Pesach and not Kevin that's seeing this ad, and that is a real hard problem to solve. And I'm just sitting here as a simple guy measuring outcomes. There's bigger brains than me who are going to figure this out, like Jeff Green or I don't know, Neil Mohan.
So let's pretend it's 2026. Which of these headlines do you think are most likely? A, Tubi overtakes Netflix in attention share. B, Amazon buys Nielsen and names it Jeff. Or C, Disney and Roku merge to create Roku Mouse Plus. Or something much weirder, which is possible too.
So I think, listen, the first one, let's just quickly dive into that. I think Tubi and Netflix are fascinating because they have such different strengths, right? And different just models. So I think they're both fascinating, but they're not putting them in the same conversations, almost like mixing, sort of peanut butter and tuna fish, right? It's just it's a weird mix. They're just that different.
I think I tried peanut butter and cheese when I was a kid. It did not work out.
Peanut butter and pickles are good together. That is a true, a strange pairing. But Elvis was on something with that. But I'd say, peanut butter and canned tuna, no. I think you mentioned, I'll pick on Roku Disney. I do think Roku is in a fascinating position as one of the real potential swing voters in this ecosystem to have, by some reports, a third or more of the smart TV usage,
right.
In terms of share.
I have Disney. It comes with my Verizon account automatically, so I don't even.
Right.
It's not even. The bundling is great.
Right. Disney's, it's a given for anybody with kids. And Disney's got an incredible franchise, but they don't own the final distribution to the living room, right? And that's what Roku does in a leading way. There are certain people like Amazon who've got a franchise in the living room with their Fire TVs, and they've got the whole stack. So that's pretty fascinating. You've got people who are pretty far from the living room, like the Trade Desk, but are really crucial in this ecosystem. And Roku sitting there as one of the only independents who's got, a very strong position in the living room. So I do think that they are, one of those players out there that could be hugely pivotal in who the next phase of winners are in this ecosystem. I wouldn't be shocked if they're in the M&A game sooner than later. I'm not alone in thinking that, by the way, but of all the things you threw out, I think that one is interesting. I'm not saying Disney's the one that buys them, but Roku's a really interesting player.
So let's be honest, most ad tech decks promise you'll get better performance, more scale, less fraud, and maybe a back massage. But under the hood, we know it's often smoke and mirrors and metrics spreadsheet duct tape to a DSP. What is your personal favorite ad tech illusion, and how do we kill it, metaphorically again?
I mean, I was saying it earlier. I think this idea that you can have a truly high confidence view of the individual, even the household, is a myth. I think this idea that, and I know I'm like, I'm talking against a very big industrial complex of people peddling user data, but I think the accuracy of that user data is really questionable in many cases. I'm not alone in that, but I don't think enough people question what percentage of the data I'm buying is actually accurate. I think that should be a bigger question for folks.
So agencies say they're building platforms, tech companies say they're partnering. Who's lying? And you have a shovel too.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, both, but they don't. It's not. They're not deliberately lying. They're just wishing that they were good at something that they're not. It's kind of more wishful thinking than lying. Let me put it that way.
It's the good diplomatic answer.
Well, I'm still agreeing with you, which is, dangerous.
That's what my wife says all the time. You're given a $100 billion VC fund to disrupt the ad tech status quo. What is one feature capacity you'd build that doesn't exist right now?
I mean, I'd really like to see a more level playing field where this really great ecosystem that we call CTV, and let's go bigger than like CTV, let's convergent TV, which is, maybe is the same as CTV in some people's definitions. But I'd love to see this ecosystem have the same kind of automated performance optimization that Google and Meta natively bring to their businesses, because that would give us, I think, a really level playing field on where the money flows. I do worry a lot that, the more money that flows into walled gardens will be money that flows out of, the things that really make our society really healthy, like good news and information, that is easily accessible. And the more that we have a healthy ad supported, news ecosystem, that's really diverse and robust, I think the better we're going to all be. When it's so easy, when you can just hit that easy button that Zuckerberg talks about and say, here's my budget, here's my goal, figure it out. Of course, a lot of money flows to that because that is really attractive to a lot of people who need to just grow their businesses, right? And, if TV advertising could be that easy, which we started EDO with the idea that it would need to evolve like this, but we're still pretty far from, I think, that promised land. It's because we're still just saying, let me reach this target audience at the lowest CPM. That is not what has built Google and Meta into these massive businesses. What's built them is that automated optimization towards the ROI that people want. And I want to see TV get there. And that means everybody's got to step up and evolve a lot faster than they're evolving. Or else I do think the best ecosystem out there, CTV, could degrade because of these walled gardens.
So you've done something most of this business haven't. You've turned an unimaginable loss into a force for good. Choose Creativity isn't just a nonprofit, it's a mission forged in fire. How did building something that meaningful reshape how you think about work, metrics, and your legacy?
Yeah, thanks for asking about it. For those who might be listening and don't know the background, I mean, my wife Marina and I, we lost two of our kids, Lulu and Leo, in October of 2012 in just a horrible tragedy that I would never hope anyone has to experience, but unfortunately people do. And, I think that the key for us is in the face of that kind of just terrible destruction, we had a real natural impulse to create. It was our creativity that we'd been channeling into raising our kids that we then channeled into taking care of our surviving daughter, Nessie, and rebuilding our family, having two more kids after that, Felix and Linus, and at the same time, very much being committed to the memory of Lulu and Leo and turning that loss into something that was a creative good instead of, just destructive loss. And what we did is we really just started answering the questions that people, good-natured, like very truly curious people were like, how are you doing this? How are you rebuilding? What can we learn from what you're going through? And Marina, who's was a kindergarten teacher in public schools before we started having kids, she just did what came naturally to her, which was start answering the question in the ways she would teach it if she were in a school. And she had the idea that there were like 10 pillars of our creativity that could be lesson plans in a school day. But instead of putting like creativity in like the box of arts and just saying, okay, there's like a half hour a day dedicated to art and creativity, it's an everyday thing. It's all through the day. It's your mindset that says, I can handle whatever life throws at me, the good and the bad. I can see the possibility in moments that are, everything from fun to mundane to terrible. And I can see that, or I can have the confidence that I can handle, and affect change on what's coming at me. And so Pesach are like, to me, like a great example of you're just like constantly creating. And, what is it about that when you break it down? Well, I think you're curious and you're inventive and you're intuitive. And these are words that are the pillars of our curriculum. These 10
I grew up in a family of educators.
Right. And, you're
both my parents were professors and a college president, and I grew up in a very creative environment. Always told I need to be thinking.
Yeah. And, and all these principles are so valuable, right? To say you should be unconventional, you should be resourceful, you should be all these things. The kids love it. The trick is we are building a vocabulary, a shared vocabulary for the adults around these kids so that we're actually building scaffolding instead of tearing away these like intrinsically creative qualities about kids. And we're saying to them, instead of, hey, conform, we're saying, hey, use this, develop creative confidence. And the data shows from pioneers like Albert Bandura, who was a Stanford professor of psychology, creative confidence, this idea of self-efficacy, that I can affect change on my world, is highly predictive of healthier relationships, more successful school outcomes, more successful work outcomes, and overall more sort of holistically successful people. And so, we've just turned that into something that we deliver into public schools, mostly in New York, but we've gone nationwide. We train whole schools, or we'll train individual teachers. It's a pay what you can model, and then our donors support the rest, which on average is over 85% of our cost to deliver our services are donor supported, and the schools and individual teachers are paying less than 15% of the cost, and we love it. We've trained 30,000. We've served 30,000 kids by training over 1,700 teachers. So it's a really scalable model that we're thrilled to be growing and helping give back to the city. Frankly, the city took amazing care of us after our tragedy. I mean, we felt so supported by everyone around us that I just I love this place. We're permanent New Yorkers, and I want to see every community in New York get the kind of support that we felt when we were at our lowest.
So you rebuilt with love. What did this teach you about control and letting go?
Yeah, the biggest, people say Marina and I, the biggest risk to a marriage is losing a kid. I think the stats are pretty powerful on the probability of divorce in the face of something like this. And a big thing, people say how'd you do it? And I said, number one, you got to be patient. You got to be patient with your partners. Marina would grieve on an entirely different cycle than I was grieving on. And our styles of, what gave us comfort and what, we did to get through the toughest moments and to kind of start growing again, we were very individualized on that. And it was patience that allowed us to really kind of understand and be there for the other person without demanding that our other, our partner be just like us. It's just, that's not good. So yeah, I think that is one of the biggest lessons of letting go is really being patient and not demanding that everything happen on your own schedule, in your own style. And frankly, that I think also has helped me a lot be a better leader at work, whether it's our nonprofit or our for-profit. because I'm a perfectionist for sure, 100%. And that ability to be patient, let things evolve on their own, in their own ways is hard, and it's really good. It's a very good thing to do.
So in your writing, you speak a lot of grace. So where do you find it now, and how do you know when it's missing?
Yeah, I think grace is one of those really magical, things that I feel is very spiritual. So, I'm not sure I can give you any definitive answer on how to get it exactly, but it's to be open to it is one of the things that I know to be true. Is you got to be open to it. It comes at you in places and in ways that might be surprising. And the other thing I'd say is when you're out of it, to get back to being present is the best thing you can do. And that's another one of our creative principles, is just live in the moment, because you're then open to all the grace, all the beauty, all the serendipity of this, of this world we're in. And if you can be present, those things come to you. If you're out of your own present moment and you're stuck, being upset about something that happened in the past, or you're worried about something coming in the future, you're going to miss all this good that comes at you in the present.
So what's a fear that sneaks up on you in quiet moments, and one joy that never fails to surprise you?
Jeez. Oh, wow. I'd say the things that I just keep I keep reminding myself when I find myself drifting into concern about the future or recriminations about the past. You can only eat the breakfast in front of you, right? You can only really be satisfied by what's here and now. And when it's time to plan for the future and worry about the future, make that the thing you're doing at the moment, right? Okay, I'm going to take the next half hour and I'm going to plan ahead. I'm going to create a list, which for me is the way I take the sort of amorphous fear and turn it into something concrete and achievable. Is I'll just write it all down, and then start ticking off the boxes. And if for somebody else it's a different thing that helps you get through it, do that. But turn that future worry into a now activity is, to me, just the best way to get out of your own head and into the moment. And when you're in the moment, the grace will come to you in those moments you least expect it. I do love the wisdom of that old Monty Python skit, "Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition." I think that's actually profound.
It's one of my wife's favorite ones. She studied the Spanish Inquisition and tortures. One of her degrees in history.
It's I love the comedy of the skit, but there's a profound level to it that says, there's this profound other level that's it's not what you're worried about that's going to come and get you. So stop worrying about it.
So you've written, you've built, you've led, and you've loved. What's the next chapter that you're most excited for?
Oh gosh, what's been a really interesting surprise. I was sort of a restless intellect for a lot of my first 2/3 of my career, and I'd say probably my average tenure was 3 years. I've been doing Choose Creativity for essentially 12 years and EDO for 10. And what's really rewarding about that is that you get to this really next level of experience and knowledge that drives so much intuition that I think I don't know, I'm excited for just the unlocks that all that sort of accumulated, information can lead to, that is about, I think, the creativity of, having a ton of intuition on what's going to work and what's not, and be good at prioritizing, be good at smelling the great ideas and the not so good ones, and really kind of being able to put more and more energy into what I think is going to be the most impactful. So yeah, I don't know. That's what I'm excited about. The fact that I'm not a newbie anymore.
So the hardest question: if your career disappeared tomorrow, what do you want to be remembered for?
That I was helping good people get better. That I think I've got a great track record, if I don't mind saying, of when I've built a team, that team thrives after I've moved on. And I think that's the thing to be most proud of as a leader, is that you found good people. You not only found the good people, but you found what they were good at and what they liked doing, and then you helped them maximize that in each of their respective roles on a team. That's just, to me, the best testament of a successful leader. So hopefully, I'll have a bunch of people saying that was true.
That was intense, emotional, and deeply informative. A huge thank you to Kevin Krim for sharing his incredible story and being such a vital part of our learning experience. We appreciate his honesty, vulnerability, and the powerful insights he's brought to the table. Next week, for his third time on the show, we're thrilled to welcome Anthony Katsur, CEO of the IAB Tech Lab. You won't want to miss it. And as always, a big thank you to our sponsors, Troutman Amin LLP and Incremental. You make this all possible. Catch you next time, same place, same unapologetically real content. Stay bold, stay curious, and know more than you did yesterday.